Good morning. It's about 10:30, almost. So please mute yourselves and we will start our YouTube recording and begin this morning's service. Since we are broadcasting on Zoom, we have a few requests for you. Please stay muted even when you are invited to sing, because we all know Zoom is not kind to singing together as a group. The chat feature will be used for new folks to introduce themselves. And we invite you to have a candle or chalice available so that you can share in the chalice lighting ritual. Thank you. We're now going to start our service with Enter, Rejoice, and Zoom In. Good morning. I'm Lori Douglas. It's my pleasure to be your worship associate this morning. I also serve as your board president. Welcome to the UU Fellowship of Charlotte County, Florida, for the last Sunday morning Zoom worship service for the time being. And we'll attempt to make it entertaining for you so that you can remember all these little non-perfections that happen during Zoom. Like Nancy Weaver's being spotlighted while I speak, so we're doing a little bit of interesting things there. You are welcome.
Lori, you have become muted.
Thank you. All right, you are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter your background. You are welcome here to join us as we proclaim worth in our spiritual journeys. You are welcome here to join us as we sing songs that uplift our very beings. You are welcome here to join us in community as we learn, live, and love together. Please join me in giving thanks for today's team that braved the technology. Jackie M., our UUFCC Zoom host, Laura A., this morning's Zoom director, who is happily retiring from this position, and the behind-the-scenes tech whizzies, Tom and Corey. Also, I thank Jim, our music director, and Linda, who worked our magic on the recordings, and the members of the UUFCC Recording Quarantine Choir. If you are new to our community, I invite you to enter your name and any information you'd like to know us about in the chat, like us to know about you in the chat feature. You may also contact our office administrator at office@uucfcc.org for additional information about our fellowship and request any email updates. We're going to move to the chalice lighting, and following the words, I will light my chalice. Then you can light yours, and we will say the affirmation together. Oh, I think I just burned my finger. It's not quite the same as it is in this chalice there. Here we go. There we go. All right, we have begun. Now, please light your home chalices and join me in the recitation of our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Our opening words here today were written by Reverend Richard S. Gilbert from his book, Becoming, a Spiritual Guide for Navigating Adulthood. Sounds like something we can all use. Reverend Gilbert retired in 2005 after serving 44 years in the UU ministry in Ohio, Colorado, and Ithaca, New York. And then another 32 years at the First United Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York. This is entitled, We Meet on Holy Ground. Whether virtual or in person, our connections are our holy ground, or is our holy ground. We meet on holy ground, brought into being as life encounters life, as personal histories merge into the communal story, as we take pride and pain in our companions, as we separate selves, as our separate selves become community. How desperate is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into the lives of those we meet, and their welcome into our own. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and in this space, for we meet on holy ground. Please join me in our special music, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Today, this is by Joyce Poley and the musicians of the UU Society of Grafton and Upton, Massachusetts.
When our heart is in the holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we
We have a long tradition here at UUFCC of sharing our joys and sorrows and life milestones by entering them into the Book of Life. While we meet virtually, here for the last time perhaps, we have asked you to email these to worshipassociates@uufcc.org. Messages should be sent no later than the Saturday prior to the service. Now, starting next week, joys and sorrows may also be submitted to the worship associate in person on cards that will be made available. During the Sunday morning service, following the receipt of your message, the worship associate will read your words to the congregation. After that, your message will be entered into the actual red book. We've shifted that because of the COVID, so we won't all be writing in the red book every week for a while. After I've completed the reading, we will enter into a moment of silent meditation, followed by the singing of the prayer, Spirit of Life. Today, we set attentions for Mary Jane, our administrator, to have a successful surgery on Tuesday and a full and restful recovery. Let us also remember Corey as he starts a new adventure with his new apartment. And now, we take a moment to acknowledge the unspoken joys, sorrows, and milestones that are among us, and move to a minute of silent meditation. I will ring the chimes when it is over. I welcome you back to join with us today with our speaker. Reverend Kathy Schmitz returns, and she has recently finished her position as Grandma School Supporter during COVID. Kathy's now back in Orlando and continues to work as a visiting minister. We're blessed to have Reverend Kathy continue to join us in the pulpit on the third Thursday of every month. We now welcome Reverend Kathy Schmitz.
Thank you, Lori, and it's great to be back with you, and also an honor to be presenting at what may be your last Zoom service. So thanks for having me. Now, throughout my life, and like I assume many of you, I have now and again kept a journal. Typically, this involved noting at the end of the day any activities or feelings that seemed significant. In this way, I have narrated the story of my life. But for the last year and a half, I've been doing something a little different. I picked up a journal that asks a different question every day, requiring just a short answer. It's all sorts of randomness, and it's been fun because it has caused me to think in different ways about different things. Recently, one question caused me to pause. It was a simple question. What was your favorite day this week? Oh, I thought, today was a good day. But then I remembered the walk that my husband Charlie and I took to explore a new neighborhood. But then again, maybe it was the unexpected day off with our grandson. 3 good days to choose from. How lovely. What struck me was how the question changed my perspective on the week. If the question had been, what stands out in your week? The story I would have told would have been the troubles one of my friends was having and the conflict in a group I know. That simple question and 3 good days to choose from reframed the week in my mind and the story that I was telling myself about it. I am grateful. And for the record, I didn't choose just one. I wrote down all 3. It reminded me of friends who keep gratitude journals. taking time each evening to reflect on 1 to 3 things in their day for which they are grateful. Now, I don't mean to suggest that we ignore life's challenges or pretend they don't exist. I only mean to suggest that we resist the tendency to let them take over our life's story. A few years back, I had the opportunity to serve as an interim minister at a relatively new congregation, by which I mean about 3 years old. They had undergone a lot of change and challenge in their short history together. After a while, I noticed something about how they told their story. There was a day, admittedly an important day, that they referred to as the day the bomb dropped. It startled me every time I heard it, even though I knew what they were referring to. The congregation had been started as an experiment of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and it had some outside funding early on. There came a day when the funding ended and they needed to transition from being a noteworthy experiment to being a congregation that stood on its own. The day they found out their funding would end, which admittedly came earlier than expected, was what they referred to as the day the bomb dropped. After I'd been there a while and had seen what a creative and resilient group they were, I gathered up my courage and suggested that they learn to tell their story without using the word bomb. But that's what it felt like, they said. I know, I replied, but what do you think that story sounds like to new folks? Fortunately, there were several new folks in the room at the time to tell them. They came to realize that the bomb narrative to new people sounded like, we're all traumatized, want to be part of us? It was a pretty sketchy proposition. More importantly, the bomb narrative overshadowed their success, their hero's journey, if you will. So a small group wrote out a new version of their story, the little congregation that could. There were challenges conquered and obstacles overcome. They shared it with the congregation. It was not just more appealing, but it was a much more fitting foundation for building their future. No longer victims, but survivors. And not just survivors, but thriving heralds of our liberal religion for those who need it in their part of the world. Our stories matter, and how we tell our stories matters. Now, it may be that our biology works against us in how we view the world. If you're a person long ago walking through the tall grass of the plains, and out of the corner of your eye, you see a rustle in the brush, it is in your best interest, in terms of survival, to assume it is a wild beast and take appropriate action. It may be much more likely that it is a little harmless bird, but the consequences of wild beast are substantial. So we may be wired to assume the worst, just in case. This wiring may have helped to keep us alive as we walked across the savannah. It may be less useful when we are navigating our lives in modern-day Charlotte County. Yet, I suspect the wire influences our perceptions, our memories, and our storytelling. And I wonder if this magnifies the difference in how one or more or two or more people experience the same event. I love reading stories that tell the same story from different points of view. But in real life, I have seen these different perspectives cause quite a bit of pain and confusion. It was during coffee hour, social hour after a worship service, that Anna approached me. She said, I don't think Gabriella and I will be able to work together on the upcoming event as planned. I was surprised. It had all been worked out in the meeting the week before. Anna explained that Gabriella was ignoring her. Really? That didn't seem like Gabriella, I thought. Anna explained that this morning when she arrived at the fellowship, she had seen Gabriella and called out good morning, and Gabriella had not responded. Not only that, but there was the matter of the email Gabrielle had not responded to. I don't think she wants to work with me. Huh, I wonder. Later, I ran into Gabriella just as she seemed to be finishing up a call on her cell. She looked concerned. I asked if she was okay. She explained that she and her siblings had trying to decide if their mother should go to the hospital after a fall the day before. After a few minutes, I had a chance to ask how things were going with Anna and planning the event. Oh, she said, I didn't have a chance to answer the email she sent yesterday with Mom and all, and I haven't seen her yet today. I've been so distracted. So there it is. Gabriella hadn't seen or heard Anna's earlier greeting. Anna had assumed the worst rather than the best. An understandably self-protective choice, but regrettable. It had the potential to weaken rather than strengthen their relationship. Fortunately, these two women were able to reconcile their stories, and the event they planned went off beautifully. When I thought about stories to illustrate this point, I realized I had an alarming number to choose from. Now, maybe it's because the minister has the opportunity to hear lots of stories from lots of different people, but I suspect leaders, teachers, managers, and others, really anyone here, could come up with stories of competing narratives that weren't really helpful. So part of it may be our human biology of survival, but some of it may be what makes a good story. In the book Soul Food, Jack Kornfield and Christina Feldman relate a story from Chuang-Tzu, who was an influential Chinese philosopher who lived in the 4th century before the Common Era. Translated, it reads, in the age when life on earth was full, no one paid any attention to worthy people, nor did they single out the person of ability. Rulers were simply the highest branches on the tree, and the people were like deer in the woods. They were honest and righteous without realizing they were doing their duty. They loved each other and did not know that this was love of neighbor. They deceived no one, and yet they did not know that they were people to be trusted. They were reliable and did not know that this was good faith. They lived freely together, giving and taking, and did not know that they were generous. For this reason, their deeds have not been narrated. They made no history. Just what is it that we include in our history, our stories, our news reports? In a workshop with media and conflict consultant Elio Fred Garcia, I learned about committing news. Committing news, Garcia said, is something we should never do accidentally, only intentionally. And he described the 5 C's that cause news to be committed. They are controversy, conflict, contradictions, colorful language, and a cast of characters. Garcia was talking about how congregations can avoid bad publicity and encourage good news coverage. But it struck me that news is committed in our everyday lives and interactions all the time. We focus on and remember the controversies. We engage the conflict and we ponder the contradictions. Colorful language can capture our attention, and who can resist an interesting cast of characters? And so it is that our brains and our casual exchanges commit news all the time, and we write these into the stories of our lives. And we neglect the beautiful afternoon exploring the nearby brook with our grandchild, the lovely meal with a friend, the kindness of a stranger. I have to admit that one of the features of Facebook that I like is that it pops up memories from a year ago or 3 or 10. And since I rarely post the 5 C's of my life, the memories that it pops up tend to be those lovely, beautiful, gentle moments of which I want to weave the narrative of my life. So I'd like to suggest a practice that you might like to try as you weave the narrative of your life. It's the writing of brief reflections. The practice goes like this. Pick an event or encounter on which you wish to reflect. Write it down and include only facts, things that are observable and that a witness wouldn't dispute. This is harder than it sounds. Reread it and see that you really, really didn't include judgments, feelings, or any subjective information. Then underneath, share your thoughts and feelings. This is the place for subjective information and judgment. This exercise can help you to recognize the difference between the facts of a situation and your reaction to a situation. In Buddhist teaching, we are taught to see what is, what really is, without all of our interpretation added on top. The teaching suggests that it is often our interpretation rather than reality that causes our suffering. So try this practice. First the facts, then your interpretation of the facts. If you want to take it further, here are some possibilities. When you write only on the left half of the page. Leave the right half free for comments later. After you've captured both your facts and your feelings, invite a trusted friend to read it and write their comments in the open space. Many helpful comments come in the form of questions. Is this really a fact? When you say the other person got angry, did they really, or did they make a face you interpreted as angry? What about this encounter caused you to feel so sad? Then talk through the comments and see what insights you find. Now, if what you're sharing is too tender to share with another person just yet, you might try putting it away for a day or two and then simply reading it with fresh eyes. On the other hand, if you are feeling very brave, you might invite another person involved in the encounter to review it. Do they see the facts the same way? Are they surprised by your reaction? What can you each learn? How might you rewrite your story of this encounter? It fascinates me that so many factors influence the simple story of our lives. And now we find ourselves individually and collectively at a crossroad in our story. The pandemic appears to be easing up, at least in our nation, and increasing numbers are vaccinated. We are beginning to come together again. Next week, in-person worship will take place again next Sunday. How will we tell the story of these last 16 months? Our personal experiences have been so different. Did we spend this time at home, or were we considered an essential worker? Were we directly impacted by the virus, or did we watch it from a distance? How did economic factors play out in our homes and the homes of those closest to us? All these things will influence the stories that we tell. there has been tragedy and heartache for sure. Some of us have been very negatively impacted. The physical distance has more than likely contributed to misunderstandings and conflicts. A truthful telling of our story will need to include these realities. And for many of us, there is more. There are stories of survival and struggle overcome. There are lessons of shifting relationships as we spent our time differently. There are reflections brought on by more time alone, and thoughts about how we want to live when this is all over. There is courage and caring, responsibility and love. I would not wish a pandemic on anyone, but as we write the narrative of this time, let's include the whole story, not just the controversy, the conflict, contradictions, colorful language, and cast of characters. We are so much more than all of that. As we move forward, we will write the next chapters of our lives, individually and collectively. And we have choices to make. May we choose well. I wish for you a journey that makes your spirit soar and your heart content. I wish for you continued courage and caring, responsibility and love. May it be so.
Thank you, Kathy. Those are beautiful and important words, and you've put up a good challenge. That's great. Thank you. We move to our closing words. Today they're written by Carl G. Seberg, who was with us from 1922 through 1998. He was a minister, scholar, writer, editor, and longtime member of the staff of UUA. This is called Through Our Temporary Lives. Through our temporary lives, the great currents of history run. Let us keep the channels open and free, so not to obstruct purposes greater than our own. Let us keep our minds set upon the high goals that here bind us into our one sharing fellowship of loving hearts. Amen. Our offering is a sacrament of the Free Church. It is supported by the generosity of all of you and the others who join with us. While Zoom and YouTube not provided ways for us to pass the baskets, financial support is still needed. And there's several ways you can give. You can mail checks to the office, you can drop them off. We're also equipped to accept donations through Venmo. And please remember that any second helping that you decide to offer supports Harry Chapin Food Bank and 2 local food pantries, CHAPS and Meals on Wheels. We now turn to life of the community. Now it is time to highlight UUFCC special events and activities. And please remember to check our weekly updates, which include a calendar and links for connecting via Zoom or in person. If you're like me, sometimes my weekly UUFCC updates go into my promotion box, so I need to set it to go the other way. So keep your eyes out in a variety of places. Additionally, if you would like to have fellowship events highlighted during the service, you can email the worship associates at bookoflife@uufcc.org. Today, I have the following announcements. As most of you are aware, unless COVID conditions change, this will be our final Zoom worship service online as we move to in-person meetings in the building next Sunday. Our worship service will continue to be broadcast live on YouTube for those of you in other locations or otherwise unable to join us in person. YouTube can be reached by the link on our website and also in the weekly updates. So all you have to do is find it and click on it. Following the service next week, we will have a coffee chat on Zoom for those that are interested. And that will be on Zoom, so you'll be able to see each other and connect. Please use the universal link found in the updates. as a reminder, despite our excitement at being together, we do have some precautions to remind you of for next week. We will be required to wear masks while indoors, and masks need to cover the full mouth and nose, as opposed to the neck gaiters that are just for sunscreen purposes. And for those unable to use masks for medical reasons or whatever, shields may be used. We will enter from the rear sanctuary double doors like we normally do, but we're going to be moving in the middle and sitting in the front rows first, all the way to the ends of the rows to minimize contact. Unless there is an ability issue which hinders that, and then we'll find our ways in a different direction. Seating will be arranged in doubles for pods or families and singles, keeping social distance. Exiting will be from the front of the sanctuary on both sides. And greeters will be present to help because we all need greeters. The goal is to reduce congestion and keep the traffic flowing while maintaining social distance. Bathrooms will switch. We'll have to get used to this. It's kind of exciting. Bathroom news is exciting always. They'll be restricted to one person now or family at a time, and they'll be labeled family bathrooms. Signs will be available to signal when they're vacant. Singing will not be allowed yet. Recorded music and non-wind instrumental music will be permitted and is arranged by our music director, Jim. Baskets for offering will be at the front of the chancel, so you'll be able to drop it in on the way out. Contact tracing, we still need to do contact tracing as we're a large group for the CDC. And so instead of clumping up at the end and signing these lists, we're going to be taking a photo of the group from the front at the beginning of the service. If you don't want to be in that photo, go ahead and sign the thing as you come in and just be concerned about social distance. And the real bummer here is there's no serving of food or drinks yet. Kitchen's closed, but we'll get there eventually. So when we leave, outdoor visiting needs to include social distancing and masks, as we all know, for those who are not fully vaccinated. Let us make plenty of room this time for those who are not comfortable with touching and hugging. Now, at this time, to tell you a bit more about the data and the philosophy behind these decisions, I'd like to introduce Joe Oyer, MD, who is one of our opening planning team experts. Welcome, Joe.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. I'm on the reopening committee whose other members are Lori Douglas, Lynn Ritchie, Linda Himes, and Catherine Ferry. We have met multiple times since first constituted about 1.5 years ago, and we're getting ready to reopen. So that's really the good news. As Lori gave you the what, I'm here to, I guess, give you the why. Why are we doing these things? Why are we taking these precautions? As we all know, none of the vaccines are 100% effective, but people who are fully vaccinated and with normal immune systems are much more likely to survive COVID-19 without significant complications. However, the virus continues to mutate, becoming more infectious. The Delta variant is rapidly becoming the major strain in the US, and it is more dangerous than past variants. There are millions of folks in the United States on medicine to suppress their immune systems for diseases like inflammatory bowel disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple skin disorders, the list goes on. These folks seem to be at higher risk for contracting COVID-19 even if fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated people on these life-altering medications do not seem to have built up an adequate immune response per early data. We need more information on them. Transplant patients are always at risk, and infectious COVID just makes their lives even more risky, more dangerous. And as we've heard over and over and then over again, increasing age is also a risk factor. So with more dangerous strains of COVID-19, we see greater risks to everyone coming over the horizon. Per a very helpful website that we have used to track COVID-19 data, Florida's risk assessment was just raised this past week. All you have to do to know that is watch the news. Having a normal immune system and being fully vaccinated is a big plus, but it is no guarantee that you will not contract this disease. So far, 66,000 people in the US who are fully vaccinated have. And if you do, you could very easily, asymptomatically and unwittingly spread it to someone more vulnerable. Thus, the precautions. The battle with COVID is far from over. As long as there are people on this planet, and there are billions who are unvaccinated, this virus will most certainly continue to mutate and to potentially become more deadly. Possibly even, and this is one of the big fears, vaccine resistant. So, we gather together, aware of the risks and cautious in our approach, being as careful and as kind to one another as our covenant would suggest. All the while, we keep our fingers on the pulse of data that continues to stream out of our medical and scientific institutions, reacting accordingly. Our thinking as a committee and our recommendations to our members and our friends are also in line with the guidance that we have received from the UUA. We hope that Reopening Sunday is a huge success, and we thank everyone who has worked so hard to make it happen. We encourage all who plan to attend live next Sunday to safely embrace and cherish the moment. Let us be the little congregation that can.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your work and that of the rest of the reopening committee. Now, please join me in extinguishing our chalices using our traditional recitation. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of our community. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts till we are together again. Go now in peace. Please join us for our closing hymn, which is For All That Is Our Life, and will be followed by the benediction with Reverend Kathy. Thank you.
Pain and loss, for each
As we write the next chapter of our stories, may we listen to each other deeply. May we speak to one another honestly. And may a true telling of all that is our lives be worthy of praise and thanks. Go in peace and live in love. Amen.
We can unmute now.